The inspirational leader always thinks about how to prevent a repeat. Because when you've got repeating problems, it's just depressing. As well as reducing performance every time, it's just ridiculous. Why should you have a repeating problem? If only you could get to the root cause and stop it repeating. Imagine if you could get rid of all repeats. I think you'd run out of problems pretty quickly. You'd have to be pretty creative to think of a new problem every time. So the game is to deal with the problem, but also to think, what is the root cause of this? So we should calmly investigate. And there's a technique I love called the 5 whys, where you ask why approximately 5 times. It might only be 3 or it might be 7. But the idea is you say, why did this happen? Why did we run out of parts? And they say, well, because the machine broke down. Well, why did the machine break down? Because it's really unreliable. Well, why have we got an unreliable machine? Because we bought the cheap one. Well, why did we buy the cheap one? Now, you may say, well, why do we want to do this? But we have to get to the root cause. And quite often when you keep asking and you keep asking, you find that in the end, it's the fact that somebody isn't trained, or we haven't spent any money on the system, or that management don't give it any attention, or whatever. And so usually when you ask why enough times, the finger comes around and points back at management. And I think that's why management quite often don't like to ask why. They would rather just criticize somebody else. But really, you should keep asking why until you get to the root cause. Even if it's you, you can then fix it, and never again will you have to deal with that problem. I've got a real life example to tell you about this. When I worked at Westland Helicopters, we were at the Weston-super-Mare site, which was about an hour away from the main site. And we were just doing repairs to gearboxes and rotor blades and things. And we needed parts. And all the parts we needed for the repairing came from the main site in Yeovil. And probably only about 10% of what Yeovil made went into spares. The rest all went into new build of new helicopters. And we were always bottom of the pile, because if you're going to let somebody down, do you let down the repair people, or do you let down the big new helicopter that's waiting for one more thing before it can go to a customer? So if they made 90% instead of 100% in any given week, that 10% that didn't get made was everything that we needed. So we were always short of parts. And at one point we made a list of just 20 part numbers that we needed. And if we could get those 20 part numbers, we could ship out a whole load of repaired gearboxes. And gearboxes went for something like, I don't know, £100,000 or something. We're talking a lot of money for these helicopter gearboxes. And we just needed a washer or a bolt. Ridiculous. So we were constantly being hammered about the fact that we didn't ship the gearboxes out. And we were saying, but we can't get the parts. And I remember this big important manager came from Yeovil to see what the problem was. And he had this meeting and he said, what's the matter with you lot? Why can't you ship these gearboxes? And we said, we haven't got the parts and we just want these 20 part numbers. If we had these, we'd be all right. And he said, right, leave it to me. And he took the list and he went away. And a week later, he came back with this greasy little bag of components and he slammed it on the middle of the boardroom table. He went, there you are, there's your parts. Now get on with your job. And I remember sitting there thinking, it's great that we've got those parts, but this has not solved the problem, because next week there's going to be another 20 parts that we need. What he did, I mean, obviously it allowed us to ship some gearboxes, but really it was just macho posturing, because if you're the manufacturing director, it's dead easy to go down to Yeovil and say, make me these 20 things right now. It wasn't an achievement for the manufacturing director to get those things made, was it? And what was the cost of interrupting all the jobs to get those 20? I mean, they were made at a vast cost and it didn't achieve anything in the long run. So what he should have done was ask himself and to ask us, why is this problem happening? How can it be that they can't even get simple parts from Yeovil? And how do we fix that problem? At the time, I was suggesting we should have our own machine shop. Just give us a few little machines so that we could make special sized washers ourselves. And Yeovil didn't want that because they like to have complete control of all the manufacturing. But we could have had quality control and inspection and all that sort of thing. It would have been fine. But he wasn't interested in fixing the underlying problem. He just wanted to look good and slam a greasy bag of washers and bolts on the table in front of us so that he could look great. Look at me, I've solved your problem. But he didn't really solve it, did he? The great manager stands back. Obviously they solve the one-off problem, but also they stand back and they think, what is the root cause of this and how do we prevent it repeating next time? Systems thinking, that's the key to it.